I was not supposed to be inside the vault at all. My clearance was medical. My job on Keth Voss was the survey crew. Their ligaments, their lungs, the occasional cracked rib when someone miscalculated a descent cable. The archive hall, the alien memory vault that the research team had been arguing over for 14 years, was not my territory. I had walked past its sealed entrance 100 times on my way to the site infirmary without giving it more than a glance. He was a junior surveyor, 26, careless with his footing in the way only young men are careless, and he had pulled a section of the vault's outer scaffolding onto his left leg when a wall mount anchor gave way. The call came over comms at 0940. By the time I pushed through the research team milling at the threshold, Pren was flat on the vault floor, with a compound fracture of the tibia and a blood pressure reading that was telling me we had minutes, not the luxury of waiting for an evac gurney to navigate the corridor. The vault was vast. That was the word everyone used, and everyone meant it differently. The research team meant it in terms of data density, the number of embedded panel surfaces, the theoretical storage capacity of the wall architecture they had never managed to unlock. I meant it the way a field surgeon means it. Too much empty floor between me and the nearest hard surface I could use as a brace. The panels covered every wall from floor to ceiling, pale composite over dark aggregate beneath. Smooth, almost warm to the touch when the ambient temperature on the survey floor ran cold, which everyone had noted, and no one had explained. Featureless. No glyphs. No seams the research team could find. No response to sonic or thermal or electromagnetic probe across 14 years of methodical attempt. Category 4 inert. A vault that had simply decided, somewhere in the long silence before humans arrived on Keth Voss, that it had nothing to say. I was not thinking about the panels. Prennan's femoral pulse was thready, and his color was wrong, and I had my kit open on the floor, and both hands occupied before the rest of the team had finished clearing back from the doorway. I set a pressure cuff. I called his vitals to the comms relay and listened for the evac confirmation that was going to take 11 minutes, because everything on Keth Voss took 11 minutes. And at some point in those 11 minutes, I needed a third point of contact. It is a thing they do not teach in medical training because it is not a technique, it is a habit, and habits are not taught. When you are working on the floor over a patient, and your hands are both committed and your balance is uncertain, you lean. I have been doing it since my first field rotation, long before Keth Voss, long before survey work. My mother did it. She was a triage nurse on 3 different colony stations, and I watched her brace herself the same way 100 times before I was old enough to understand what medicine was. I pressed my palm flat against the nearest panel. I felt it warm. Not the ambient warmth I had registered before and dismissed. Something underneath the surface, rising toward my hand. I did not move. I was focused on Pren. Then the seam appeared. A line of pale light, barely brighter than the ambient glow of the survey lamps, running along the panel's left edge from floor to ceiling. I saw it in my peripheral vision. I did not take my hand away. Another seam, the right edge this time. I heard one of the researchers say something behind me, a single word, low, cut off. I did not turn around. Pren's pressure was stabilizing. The packing was holding. I adjusted the cuff tension with my free hand and kept the other flat against the panel. The light was not dramatic. That was what I thought about later, in the long hours after, when everyone else was talking about what they had seen, and I was trying to find language for what I had felt. There was no explosion of illumination, no theatrical fracturing of the surface, no sound that the recording equipment would have flagged as anomalous. The vault woke the way a patient's vitals stabilize after the right intervention, steadily, from the center outward, vital sign by vital sign. The panels lit. All of them. The whole circumference of the vault, floor to ceiling. A slow, even brightening, like a body deciding to hold on. Prenen's evac arrived at 11 minutes and 14 seconds. I did not move my palm until the gurney team had him strapped and clear. Then I stood, and I turned around, and I understood for the first time that everyone in the vault was looking at me and not at the patient. The research lead, a woman named Dalla, who had spent a decade and a half trying to find the vault's activation key, with every instrument the survey consortium could field, was standing 6 meters away, with her tablet held at her side and her mouth slightly open. She was not looking at the panels. She was looking at my hand. I looked at my hand. The panel where I had braced myself was the brightest. A starburst pattern, amber gold, spreading from the exact point where my palm had made contact. Very faint at the outer edges, concentrated at the center. It was the only warm color in the room. Everything else the vault was showing was cool, pale silver blue, the color of deep system starlight filtered through a lot of atmosphere. But that point, that single handprint-shaped node, gold. Behind me, I could hear Dala moving, could hear the soft percussion of her taking notes without knowing what to write down. I could hear two of the junior researchers whispering. I could hear my own pulse, which was slower than it should have been, given what I was looking at. The voice came without warning, not through the air, through the bone, through the jaw and the sternum, and something behind the sternum I do not have an anatomical name for, a resonance the body holds below the level of hearing. I have read the reports from other recognition events, the blade on Kareth Den, the pillar on Orith Ven, the beacon at Station Ven 7, and everyone describes the same thing, and everyone says the description fails. I am saying it anyway. It is not a sound you hear. It is a sound you already contain, and the relic simply locates it. It said, "Assembled true, first architect." I did not know, in that moment, what it meant. I knew what the words were. I knew what architect meant in standard survey language. I did not know what the first meant, or what assembled referred to, or why those particular words had been waiting inside a sealed vault, on a world we had only surveyed for 20 years. Dala's team spent the next 6 weeks explaining it to me. The builders had not sealed the archive against intrusion. They had sealed it against the wrong hands. The key was not a code or a frequency or a chemical signature. It was a gesture. A specific, trained, embodied gesture. The flat palm brace of a person who has learned to hold something steady under pressure, while both hands are otherwise committed. The healer's brace. My mother had it. Her mother before her. 3 generations of triage nurses and field surgeons and colony station medics. All of us pressing our palms flat against whatever surface was nearest when we needed to steady ourselves over a patient. had found the lineage and followed it forward across centuries, encoding the recognition into the vault's architecture. Waiting for the moment when a hand that knew how to find what was broken and hold it came to rest on the surface. Not a warrior's hand, not a king's hand. A hand that knows how to keep something alive. I thought about all the survey records I had never read, all the sealed vaults that had refused all comers, and what they must have been holding. I asked Dalla, on the 6th day of the 6th week, what the vault actually contained. She was quiet for a long time before she answered. She said, everything the builders knew about keeping things alive. Every biological system they had ever mapped. Every disease they had ever cured. Every damage protocol for every species they had ever encountered. 14 years of the Survey Consortium's best research instruments, and it had not opened for any of them. It opened for me because I needed to brace myself over a bleeding man, and that need was the only key that ever fit the lock. I have cracked my share of ribs with chest compressions, and I have packed wounds that should not have been survivable, and I have held things together with 2 hands, and a prayer on worlds that did not want to be held. I did not think that made me anything except useful. It turns out the builders thought differently,